Hello everyone, welcome back. Happy Monday. I have your weekly dose of ghost stories and makeup here for you. I hope you've had an amazing weekend. It's Monday, beginning of a new week. Happens every week. So if this is your first time joining me here on a Monday, basically what I do is I read out ghost stories that my subscribers have sent in to this email address right here, and I read them out while I'm creating a look that's based around like a way to die. I promise you I'm a normal person. But just before we get into today's ghost story videos, I want to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, and that is June's Journey. You all know how much I love June's Journey. June's Journey is a hidden object mystery game based in the 1920s, and it's completely free for you to download. One of my favorite parts of June's Journey is the artwork and scenery and just the detail and precision that's gone into all these incredible scenes. And I've mentioned before how June's Journey is my social media escape. So I used to play June's Journey before I went to bed, and now I've kind of done that as my step before I go to bed. So at the end of the night, I'll wind down and just play June's Journey. You don't feel rushed. You don't feel like you have to, do everything. It's a really relaxing, really quite calming game. And being a murder mystery game, I know how much you would all be into it. I know we're into the same stuff. I've been playing this for quite a while now, and I really love how the game progresses and the characters that come into it and all the kind of unique people that you meet and all the sceneries. Yeah, I absolutely love it, and I know you will too. So I'll leave a link down below for you all to go ahead and check that out. So today's death theme is I've gone paintballing, like with the guns, the paintball guns, and I've been before in real life, and it was so much fun but so painful. And what happened was I was wearing a mask, and I was like, oh, I'm really hot, because they have that protective mask. I was like, let me just take it off for 1 second so I can drink from my flask. But as I took it off, someone paintballed me, and it hit me in this place in your neck where if you accidentally touch it, you die. Is that a thing? Or is it you faint? I don't know. Well, it killed me. So we're going to have a paintballed resurrection ghost. Also, do you all care if I talk about the products I use, or if you do want me to list them below? Let me know, because I don't like to talk about them too much because it kind of distracts from the stories. But I am going to be using this palette from Beauty Bay today. I bought this myself because look at all those purples. Why wouldn't I? Okay, so our first story today is called My Summer in Seoul. So it says, hello, Robert. Before I tell my story, I'd just like to say I love your channel. You're amazing. Thank you. During the summer of 2017, I decided to go to summer school in Seoul, South Korea, as my university offered this program. The summer school was amazing and enjoyed our days out with the Korean helpers who were also students. One day we went to the beach and I came unprepared. At first, I convinced myself I wasn't going into the water, but once I was there, I changed my mind. All my clothes and the 2 towels I had brought along were all ruined. We got back to our dorms quite late. They had this rule where they would shut the whole building around 1 a.m. to open its doors up around 6 a.m. During those hours, the lights in the hallway would get turned off, and instead there would just be dimmed lights, but overall the hallways were very dark at night. I wanted to wash and dry my clothes, and I thought I was very smart to do this at 2 a.m. The laundry room was quite a walk from my room, but was on the same floor. I put my headphones on and put my clothes in a wash. My gut was telling me not to do this so late, but I was wide awake. When I first walked into the laundry room, I felt uneasy, as if someone was walking behind me. I ignored this feeling and put my clothes in the washing machine. On the way back to my room, the same feeling had returned. I felt as someone was behind me. I didn't look back. Coming from an Asian culture, my dad always said if you feel like someone is behind you and you know they're not, never look back. As I returned to the laundry room, now to dry my clothes, the same feeling had once again returned. This time, it felt a bit stronger. I tried to take my mind off it by focusing on the music I was listening to, but as soon as I got into the laundry room, I took my headphones off, as I felt uncomfortable due to this feeling. It was my final trip at 3 a.m, just to grab my clothes, which were all done. I thought about leaving my clothes there until the morning, but I just thought about someone stealing them or getting misplaced, so I walked and grabbed my clothes. I felt surprisingly okay. the feeling was gone. I didn't feel as if anyone was behind me. I grabbed my clothes, and as soon as I started to walk back to my room, the feeling had returned. This time, it was very strong. I was convinced someone was behind me. I kept repeating myself, don't look back. I took one of my headphones out and started to pace as I felt someone was catching up to me. It felt unreal, but someone was there. I got back into my room and locked the door. The next morning, I explained what happened to me that night to one of the Korean helpers. He wasn't surprised. He said that last year a student committed suicide on the same floor. This gave me chills. Maybe it was the spirit of a student. I had never experienced anything like this before, nor would I ever forget this. Thank you so much for your story. That feeling is one of the worst feelings ever, when you feel like you're being watched or like someone's up behind you. And I sometimes think we can blame it down to being alone and being just creeped out. And I feel like if you believe in like ghosts and things like that, then naturally you're going to be like, oh, this could happen. Someone could be following me. But I think there must be also a clear distinction between that feeling of, no, actually there is something there, or, you know, I'm just kind of making it up. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have up next our first audio story. This story is called Baby Monitor. Oh, I fucking hate stories like when I see no. Oh, okay, let's go.
Hi, Robert. I first want to go ahead and say that I absolutely adore watching your channel. It's my guilty pleasure to be able to come home and just watch you do your thing. Anyways, this story takes place when I was 11 years old. I am now 26, so it's been quite a few years ago. And a little backstory of my family is we were always big on watching movies together. So one particular night, my father, my mom, and I are in my parents' bedroom watching a movie. And I have a brother who at the time was a baby. And he was in his separate room sleeping. And mind you, there was nobody in my house. So just my parents, my baby brother, and myself. Now, as we're watching our movie, we hear a man's voice call out my dad's name through the baby monitor. And that was extremely creepy. And my dad asks my mom, "Did you hear that?" My mom says yes and tells him to just shake it off. Now, this gets even creepier because it happened a second time this same night, right after another. But the thing is, the second time it happened, the voice sounds mad as it calls my dad's name once more. And my dad says, and it just gives me goosebumps thinking about it, but he says, "That sounds like my father." We're all like quiet, and we just decide to continue watching the movie and pretend like nothing happened. Now, the following morning, my dad gets a call, and it's my grandma, and he's like, "Hey, sorry, but yesterday your father passed away." So I don't know how, or is there any explanation to this, because there was nobody in the house that could have possibly called out my dad's name. And my dad was 100% certain that it was my grandfather calling him out. So I don't know, was he trying to say goodbye, or can, family members who have passed away be able to hear us through radio frequencies, or you know what I mean. But yeah, that's my story. I hope you hear this, and thank you again so much for putting in time, effort, and your expertise into teaching all of us how to do great makeup. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your kind words. That really does mean a lot. I have goosebumps. I just feel like so. Things like, first of all, baby monitor stories scare the crap out of me. And then there's something even scarier when it's a voice you recognize. If it's a voice you don't know, then it could be like, oh, someone's hacked our monitor and they're just like having, you know, like a joke and trying to scare us, because you can see people do that all the time. But then for your dad to be like, that's my dad, that's definitely his voice. And then to have that really awful call the next day, is that a little bit too coincidental, you know? That to me is pretty scary. Have you seen, I'm sure you will have, those like when you're watching like top 5 ghosts caught on camera, and it's like those baby monitor videos where they catch some kind of weird face on a baby monitor. Ugh. And it's also kind of scary because it's like that, whatever it is right near your child. Like that terrifies me, the thought of that. I actually need to do concealer under my eyes before I carry on with this look, because I want to incorporate the bottom into it. So I'm going to read our next story. And this is Ouija Board Alarms. It says, hello, Robert. I'm so happy you're combining 2 things you love, and we all love you. Thank you so much. My story starts when I was a teenager, after my sister played with a Ouija board. One night, I heard my sister wrestling in her sleep. When I walked into her room, her sheet was over her head, and she was struggling, saying, "Get off me." A low growl came from her, and the sheet was released from over her head. We've heard footsteps, whistling, and had shelves fall and shatter pottery we made in school. But the scariest thing we encountered was one unsuspecting night. Upstairs, our rooms were arranged in an L shape. My parents in the guest room, my room, and then around a corner, my sister's room. Starting downstairs, the smoke alarm in the foyer went off. We heard heavy footsteps up the stairs. The smoke alarm in my parents' room went off. Heavy footsteps to the guest room. The alarm in the guest room goes off. Heavy footsteps past my room and right to my sister's. Her smoke alarm goes off, and the cable cuts out, only to see a flash of a man sitting at an old wooden desk. Even our cell phones stopped working during this time, as my sister was trying to talk to her friend on the phone. Everything returned to normal after that, with just the occasional shuffles at night, but ever since, I get sleep paralysis and nightmares of a woman in white trying to destroy everyone around me, and no one can hear or understand me. Ever since that night when we were young, something or some things have been attached to us and follow us wherever we go. Moral of the story, don't play with Ouija boards. You are so right. Thank you so much for that story. Do not play with Ouija boards. Display one. Have one that sits and looks pretty. Even if you don't believe in stuff like that, just don't what's the word? Take the risk. Like I don't believe in those emails where they'll email you and be like, this is the story of this woman who is now a ghost and she eats children. Pass this on to 10 people or you'll die. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But I'm passing it on to 10 people. Just in case she comes and gets me and kills my children I don't have. You never know. So next up, as is custom, we have Marcus, my older brother, reading us 2 stories while I'll do my little details. Okay, Marcus, please.
Okay, this first story is called The Closet. Hi, Robert. Huge fan of your videos, and I love your looks. By the way, you are flawless. Okay, so the story I want to bring to you today is one of shadow figures. I still live in the same house, but after changing rooms, nothing has happened there since. When I was younger, I used to read this certain paragraph in the Bible that my nana showed me, and that had powerful words and made spirits and the like, no, they have no power over you. We are very spiritual people who believe in ghosts, demons, and basically anything supernatural. I used to read this every night because I had underlying fear that I was not alone in my room. And I was right. So on one night, I was on my phone and it was really late. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, and for some reason, I just couldn't sleep. I was getting hot and I started sweating, almost like my body knew something was wrong and was sending me warning signals unconsciously. But the room I was in was chilly. I immediately whip out the Bible so that I can read these texts and make me feel safe, but it didn't work. The clothes in my closet started moving. A figure in my closet began to form. It pushed my clothes aside as it was beginning to take its shape. It was horrifying to say the least. I was frozen in fear, scared of what would happen if I moved from my spot in the bed. It began to grow and grow and grow. I gathered up the courage to bolt out of there. I don't know what gave me such courage, but I know that I didn't want to stay in there to find out what it was going to do to me. I ran into my mum's room and asked if I could stay there for the night. I didn't tell her what I saw or what had happened in that room, but I know I won't ever move back into that room again. Story number 2 is called Adam's Jacket. Hi. Just wanted to say I love your channel. My makeup routine changed dramatically because of your tips, and I can't wait for future videos. Love heart emoji, face emoji with love hearts around it. That's very nice. Okay, here's the story. All this happened when I was around 13 years old, and I'm now 38. I lived in a farming town where the neighbours lived roughly a mile away from each other. Me and my 2 best friends were having a sleepover at one of my friend's house. Her older brother was a senior in high school when he was killed by a drunk driver about a year before this. He was a popular boy who was a huge football star. We were in the living room watching a movie, and her parents were getting ready for bed. At 10:30 p.m, there was a knock on the door. We all looked at each other and then at the time. Who would come around this late? So her dad answered, and the man said, "Hi, I just come to bring Adam's jacket back. He forgot it. It was in my truck." I know it's important to him. It was Adam's high school letterman jacket. Instant goosebumps. Her dad was shocked and asked, "Where did you get this?" The man said, "I'm just driving through and I saw this boy walking with a gym bag, so I decided to give him a ride." He continued, "Adam is very polite." We had a wonderful conversation and he said I could drop him off at the top of the road. A couple of miles down the road I saw he left his jacket, so I thought I'd bring it back. Is everything okay? We were all lost for words, and her mum burst out in tears and grabbed the jacket to inspect it. It was her brother's jacket. We didn't understand because he was laid to rest with this jacket. My friend got his picture and showed the man. "Are you sure this is the boy you gave a ride to?" He nodded yes. And her dad said, "Sir, that's impossible. My son was killed in an accident a year ago." The guy got so pale, didn't say a word, and walked away. To this day, I still don't know how to feel about this. Those are the 2 stories from me today, Robert. Happy birthday, and goodbye until next week.
Okay, so my birthday's in March. That's insane. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But at the same time, it's like, are they just trying to send a message? Or do they think they're alive? Or do they know they're dead? And then they're hoping that, you know, you'll do exactly that. Like, go to their family and be like, "Oh, your lovely son left his jacket in my car." Like, it's like, are they trying to send a message? But maybe they don't want to do it to you directly because it might scare you. Okay, so our next story is called A Tale from the Far East. It says, "Hi Robert, I'm a fairly new subscriber and your Monday videos are among my favourite to watch. Thank you so much. I just got the courage to email you this story, which I heard nearly a decade ago. But this is the only story that still gives me chills to this day. Just for a little background information, I come from a country in Southeast Asia whose culture has extremely deep-rooted beliefs in the supernatural. Partly because my country has a very long history of post-war colonization. It sounds odd, but this bit's relevant. Anyway, this story was told to me by a former colleague of mine, whose brother-in-law apparently experienced it firsthand. He was on a business trip in another town, and he was staying in a hotel which was rumoured to be haunted because it had been built over a Japanese World War II era cemetery. On his first and only night in the hotel, he was in the bed trying to go to sleep when he heard a very insistent knocking on the door and someone shouting, "Open the door, open the door." He refused to get out of bed, told him to go away, and tried to go to sleep. The knocking and calling out came again, and he again refused to get up or open the door. By the 3rd time this has happened, our sleep-deprived jet-setter was rightly annoyed. and after telling this unknown visitor to sod off for the third time, he pulled the bed covers over his head in an attempt to block out the noise, closed his eyes, and resumed his valiant efforts to fall asleep. And that is when the voice said, "Fine, don't open the door. Just open your eyes." No. What happened after that, I'll never know, because I was so badly shaken that I yelped and dashed out of my colleague's office. While I've always been inclined to take every ghost story I hear with a pinch of salt, this one really did me in. Probably because I did not see that ending coming at all. By the way, this was told to me in my country's native language, and retelling it in English doesn't make it sound as terrifying. But even though I retold it a few times over the years, and even as I write this to you today, it still scares me. Whether or not you share this in one of your videos, I hope you enjoyed it. Keep up the wonderful work. And as a fellow makeup artist and also someone who can't sit through horror movies, I hope you never stop making these videos. Thank you so much. That was terrifying no matter what language that's in. Just imagine someone being like, you know what, fine. Just open your eyes. Just have a peek. Absolutely fucking not. You can, no. No. What would you do? Would you have the guts to get up and turn on a light? Would you open your eyes? I just hope one day if I ever see a ghost or anything like that, it's not as like so much of a dick. To be like, okay, fine, I'm done banging on your door. Just open your eyes, have a little look at me. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, unless it was like, you know what, I can just really do with some company. But can't you do that in the daylight? You know? Thank you so much for that story. That is one of those perfect, like, you know, those like short horror stories where, you know what short horror story is. Okay, so I'm going to be applying a bit of contour and blush while we hear our next audio story. And this is called Old Kentucky Home.
Hi, Robert. I hope this is how people do things around here. First, I wanted to let you know I love your videos. I love your content. I'm a new, not listener, watcher, viewer. And I just have to let you know that I have an eyeshadow primer now. I don't cake on concealer and I don't bake anymore. All because of you. So anyway, my ghost story takes place in a little house in Kentucky. And this story is going to sound outlandish. And every time I tell it, no one ever really believes me. But from my memory, it's 100% true. So my grandpa lived in this, to be more precise, his name was Papa Trigger. He lived in a house that was a schoolhouse and then a firehouse, or whichever one. And I don't really know the whole story, but it was a fairly old house. And the whole ambiance of that house just really freaked me out. There was a child screaming outside, so I don't know if you could hear that, but that was very fitting for this story. So this house just creeped me out, and I never really liked going, but I would obviously go and like visit with my cousins and stuff, and every time I was there, weird things would happen. And one in particular, I was about 4 or 5 years old, and one of my first memories of that house was the toys would just randomly move, and I would tell my parents or my papa, and of course he'd be like, "You're lying." But one day I was playing with my cousin Andrew, and all of a sudden the spider that he was playing with, it was this ginormous, hairy looking, gross spider toy, started chasing me down the hall. And I initially thought, okay, he had like thrown it at me. But he was like, no, I had it in my hand the whole time. I was like, okay, that's weird. Fast forward a little bit, and my mama died. And so we went to stay with my papa. And while we were at the house, I stayed in the bedroom with my parents, and I slept on the floor. And that bedroom had a clear view into the dining room. And I was laying in bed, and I had woken up. I was a really light sleeper, so like any sort of sound or anything would wake me up in the middle of the night. So I woke up because I could hear a bunch of people talking. And I thought that was strange because it had to be late at night. My parents were always the last people to go to bed, and they were in bed. So I look over and I see all these people just having dinner at the dining room table. And I kind of made a little noise, like and I was really young at the time. I was maybe 7 or 8. And I made that noise, and they all stopped talking, and they all just stared at me. And is the most vivid memory I have of my childhood, because I remember the deep sense of fear that I had seeing this group of people stare at me. And the room instantly got cold, and I could just tell that they were upset, and I didn't know why they were upset. And I noticed that they weren't wearing typical clothes. I always call it colonial garb, but it wasn't really colonial garb. It was more like what people in the older days of Kentucky would have worn, like miner type outfits. And they just looked at me, and all of a sudden, the whole house just like became darker, and I can't explain it in a way that doesn't sound fake or not real, but it was just a feeling, and I became instantly paralyzed. And when I've told the story before, people have been like, oh, it was sleep paralysis, but it wasn't, because it was not like I was paralyzed and someone was sitting on my chest or anything like that. It was like these people would not allow me to, like, tell my parents what was going on. And so finally, after what felt like forever, I finally screamed my mom's name, and she woke up and she was like, what's going on? And I could still see the people sitting outside of the room, and she turned around and she's like, no, there's no one there, you need to go back to sleep. And I was telling her, no, someone broke in. And she just wouldn't believe me. So all night, they eventually went back to talking and having dinner, the ghosts, I'm assuming, and I just stayed up all night looking out into the dining room, and I could see them eating and talking and whatever. And at some point around the time the sun came up, I went back to sleep. So that was probably the scariest ghost experience I've had, but I know that prior to that, I was one of those kids that had I had a lot of imaginary friends, but not in the typical way that like people had imaginary friends. And of course no one ever believed me, but I've always had this sense of like being able to feel presences when I'm in certain places. And I've kind of lost that as I've gotten older, and I've read a lot about it, that like sometimes children are just more adept to like that side of the universe or whatever. And I haven't had an experience like that since then. Well, not since that moment, but since I was a child. I've had other experiences too, but that one was by far the creepiest. So other than that, the only other experience I had was when my grandma died, my grandma on my mom's side. I actually woke up right when she died in the middle of the night, and I went and woke my parents up, and I was like, something happened, and they were like, no, like you just need to go back to bed. And the next morning, my mom found out that her mom had passed away in the night. So I've had experiences like that, but that was by far the scariest. So hope that was not too creepy. I know it's weird, it sounds outlandish, but I don't know, that's just my life, I guess. So thanks for these videos, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Could never be too creepy. That is terrifying. Just imagine as a child waking up and seeing that, and then to have that knowledge that they're right there, and then your parent, it was like, no, you can't see it, nothing's there, nothing's happening. I wonder if they did see, but they were like trying to like protect you and not scare you. I would never in my life buy a house. As soon as someone's like, it's an old school, it's an old hospital, it's an old plague ward, I would instantly be like, I'm not buying this, I don't need this. And it's so true what you say about when people say kids kind of have that ability, and then as they grow up they kind of lose that. We've had a few stories on here before where it's always been the children that have like seen something or experienced something, or and it's only them. I think as we get older and we tend to try and rationalize things a little bit more, people might lose that ability. It's like not exercising a muscle, for example. Okay, I have one more story left for you today. I still want to do a little bit more detail on the eyes and pop these lashes on, so I'll go ahead and read this out. This is called Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This sounds like it's going to be terrifying. Hi Robert, I'm mostly new sub and have been watching your videos for a few weeks. They are wonderful and your personality is awesome. Thank you so much. Anyway, this story happened to me several years ago when I was 20. I live in Louisville, pronounced Louisville. Oh, I didn't know that. Kentucky, and I'm only moments away from the most haunted building in our state, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. As you may know, Waverly Hills is an infamous tuberculosis hospital in the 1900s, and is said to be haunted by the ghosts of hundreds of even thousands of souls from patients who died there. It has now become a tourist attraction for people all over the world and has been included in several TV programs. One of the most intriguing and disturbing experiences that have been had at Waverly Hills is the appearance of doppelgangers, creatures that take the form of another living creature or person. It's been said that if you meet your doppelganger, you will die, which is scary in itself, but I digress. A group of friends and I decided one day to go up to Waverly Hills, as none of us have truly visited. Shocking, I know. We bought tickets for the guided tour and all went in joking about the ghosts we would encounter. Our guide was super informative and made the comment that we shouldn't joke about the experience, as we may or may not have in the hospital, since ghosts like to play tricks and cause our views to change. We made our way around the hospital, heard all the stories, and had a bunch of laughs and jokes at our own expense. Then, as we leave the morgue, I felt something cold brush up against my shoulders. It was a warmish spring day, so I just blew it off as a cold breeze coming through the windows. The scary bit was that the cold feeling along my shoulders kept coming back, and it kept feeling like someone was taking their ice cold hands and brushing them against the tops of my shoulders and collarbones. The tour guide comforted me and said those types of encounters can be very common to folks who are sensitive to the paranormal. I shook slightly from fear, but I kept going along the tour. As we made our way up to the very spooky room 502, I caught a glimpse of something from the corner of my eye. A figure about my height and stature moving quickly across the breezeway. I jerked my head towards the area the figure came from and caught a glimpse of some flowing blonde hairs moving around the corner. I pointed off its hair that had gotten stuck in the wind and caught itself on the frame of a door. Then the figure moved past us again, this time closer than the last time. I snapped my head towards it before it had the chance to disappear behind a wall, and I saw me. Oh, fuck. Oh my god. I saw myself walking across the floor, moving with quick grace towards another door. That figure of myself must have sensed I saw it and turned around. The sight of a perfect version of myself was unsettling. Its eyes were the same shade of grey-blue as my own. Its blonde hair fell just below its shoulder blades, just as my own does. Even its posture was the same. But something was off about it. Something I couldn't place right away until it hit me. Its eyes had no emotion in them. They were blank. Those same grey-blue eyes that had the most blank, unemotional gaze I have ever seen. It chilled me to my core. I was about to yell at our tour guide when this doppelganger version of myself smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. It was as if the creature was looking at me as if I were a delectable snack for it to devour, and taking its time picking the remnants from its teeth, and then it quickly disappeared into a side room. My heart was racing, body shaking, and I made my way back to the group who were listening intently to our guide as she told the history of a room 502. My best friend looked at me and instantly knew something was wrong, and gripped my hand for the rest of the tour. We returned down the main floor and were about to depart when I opened up to the guide and asked if anyone had ever seen a double of themselves before, to which the guide said yes, and that the story goes that if anyone were ever to see their double, they were going to die. I left my questions at that, sensing the tension amongst the group of my friends deepen, and we left. I kept quiet until we got into our car and started back down the long drive from the hospital. I chanced to glance back up at the haunted hospital and I caught a glimpse of a figure standing in the window of a top floor staring down directly at me, with eyes that looked dead and demonic, but exactly like mine. I have never told anyone about what happened up there, but I pray each day that I never see my doppelganger ever again. Well, that was absolutely terrifying. Thank you so much. I loved it. I love that story. I have heard that if you see a doppelganger, it means you're going to die or something's going to happen, death. I can't even imagine the fear of seeing someone who looks exactly like you. I'm a twin. I have an identical twin brother, but we of course think that we look different from each other. So it isn't like I've experienced it. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some paintball detailings and then we will be back. Okay, so this is our finished death by paintball gun look. Thank you so much for all your stories today. I really needed this video today when I feel a little bit stressed. I have no reason to be stressed, but I get tired and it makes me stressed. I just like sleep. It's so nice to be able to read these stories, read your experiences and know that we have this very, it's not very small, but a smaller community of us lot who love these stories and, you know, come here every Monday to listen and read them. So thank you so much for joining me. You can go ahead and send your ghost stories right here. Have an amazing week ahead. I will see you Wednesday and Sunday. Yeah, see you soon. Bye.